Hello everyone, Creative Fun here, back again with another video, and today we are in the cockpit of the Mirage 2000C by Razbam. And as you can see by the title, we're gonna have a look at landing the Mirage. Now 2 years ago I made a series of tutorials on how to land the Mirage that is in fact one of my most successful and most liked and well viewed videos on this channel. And well, most of the things that I say in that tutorial is largely still correct today. Most of the technical aspects and the operations of the Mirage is pretty much the same, has not changed. However, since I made those videos, number one, the flight model of the Mirage has changed quite drastically in my opinion since then. The way you kind of need to approach and operate the Mirage has become perhaps a bit more difficult, but a bit more, as I feel it, more authentic. The Mirage acts more as a proper delta wing, relaxed static stability aircraft than before. Number two, I've actually become quite much better at flying the Mirage since I did this tutorial 2 years ago. I've been flying the Mirage since its release, yeah, I've improved myself quite considerably in terms of how to operate the Mirage, and I believe I can perform a better landing now than I could back then, and we're going to have a look at a couple of things that more advanced users might want to do when they're landing the Mirage. So we're going to jump into the cockpit here and turn towards our airbase. I have prepared some waypoints here. I believe it is waypoint number 4 or waypoint number 3. That's our main waypoint here. We can go for. Now, as I'm preparing my approach here, I just want to take you through a couple of pointers. Now, I'm not going to go through anything of the technical aspects of setting up the ILS or calling in for ATC. We're just going to have a look at the touchdowns. In a minute here, I'm going to cut directly to right before we touch down, and I'm going to talk you guys through that. So the approach is basically the same as before, and it's the same if you're doing a bad weather landing or not. Before, however, we go through the approach, which does require some concentration, so I might not be able to talk you through the entire process as I'm touching down, we are going to do something called aerobraking. Now, aerobraking is basically keeping your nose very high and using your very nice huge delta wings here to brake the aircraft on touchdown. Also, we're going to use approach method that I have become very fond of as of late in terms of landing the Mirage. The idea is to keep a constant speed of 180 knots, and right as you pass over the runway, you go to idle and you just let the Mirage sink down on the runway while you flare. Okay, as you can see now, we're approaching here on final, perhaps not quite short final just yet. And I'm going to slow down now. I'm going to try to reach around 180 knots. I'm going to try to keep just my heading indicator on the right in front of the runway. Since we're going to flare quite a bit, it's good to keep the heading indicator right in front of the runway so we have a little bit of flare space here. And as we go down to around 180 knots, we're going to try to maintain that speed all the way down. So we're approaching the edge of the runway here. We have a good angle of attack as well. And as we head over the runway here, we're going to go to idle. We're going to flare and touch down. And the second part here, just to keep the nose high as we can. Just let it brake a bit here. And as you can see, we're slowing down quite effectively here. And the nose will slowly go down. And we can just brake, brake, brake. And if we want to, we can even deploy our air brakes as soon as we touch down. That will help a bit. And we're down. As you can see, we did a very short landing here. You know, even a vegan pilot could be envious of this. So pretty easy actually. I mean, you can see I'm a little bit off. I'm on the left side. I should have stayed in the middle here, but there was a little bit of wind as we touched down. So I adjusted with the rudder and waved off a little bit. So that is how you use the aerobraking, as well as, you know, the kind of like keeping the 180 until you pass over the runway technique. And I touched down fairly nice. So pretty nice landing. I could have been a little bit more straighter on the runway here. There was a little bit of wind as I touched down, so I didn't compensate properly for that. So that is basically how you perform an efficient approach and an aerobraking maneuver as you land or as you touch down. So before we check out, I do have one more thing I want to show you guys, and that is how to operate at an airfield in bad weather or low visibility conditions without ILS. You see, we had a practice with the Dagger Squadron a few weeks ago, and some of our members had a bit of a difficulty landing at Senaki because the ILS, they weren't able to catch the ILS for some reason. I believe it was a bug with Senaki at that time. We just couldn't get the ILS to function properly. It worked fine with Kutaisi. And some of our members had a really tough time just locating the runway and touching down. So I just want to talk about the procedure that is very easy to use if you need to land at a runway that does not support ILS. And there's in fact quite a lot of runways in the Caucasus map that does not have ILS. Okay, so we're up in the Mirage again, and as I mentioned earlier, I do want to show you one more technique before I call it a night. And that is how you use the Mirage's inertial navigation system to help facilitate a landing in bad weather when you don't have access to ILS. Now, realistically, this technique could work with any aircraft that have access to an advanced GPS-aided or INS-aided navigation system. Yeah, for the purpose of this video, we're going to use the Mirage as an example. Now, I've decided to land on Gudauta, and as you can see, Gudauta has no ILS. It doesn't even have PRMG, which is the Russian equivalent of ILS. There are quite a few airfields like that in the Caucasus region. So, if we want to plan out a good approach for the Mirage, we first have to use a little ruler here, and we're going to use the right click to just give us a nice like final approach-esque area around 10 miles, roughly 10 miles out from where we want to land, and we get our coordinates in the uppermost left corner. We will then just check in here and give us a distance and coordinates for the end of the runway here at Gudauta. Now the important part is actually getting a correct coordinates right here. I would recommend setting it slightly ahead of the runway, and because if you're using this as, you're going to use this as a target point to go for, and when you flare you're going to end up a little bit further into the runway, so that's pretty good. And the most important part here is of course getting the coordinates correctly, but also the ground elevation. Now the Mirage has the ability to set ground elevation in its inertial navigation system for its waypoints. That means that you're going to get a very nice little marker when you come within a 10-mile range of your waypoint, and it's going to show you roughly, if not even exactly, depending on how long you've been flying and how much drift your inertial navigation system has accumulated, where you want to touch down, right where the edge of the runway is. So I think that's pretty good, and that means that we can actually land on Gudauta without using ILS. So back in the cockpit, I've set up my waypoints. I'm not going to go through how I set up the waypoints here. There are plenty of good tutorials on YouTube for how setting up the national navigation system and entering waypoints and the ground elevation and so on. So we're going to skip that here, and we're just going to unpause. So one thing you need to practice with when you're flying the Mirage in bad weather like this is actually flying inside the clouds and learn how to fly by instrument without getting disoriented. And once we get within 1 mile, I think it's going to switch over to the second waypoint, which is going to be the edge of the runway, and we're just going to turn the moment the waypoint switches. Now of course it's very important that we do know the heading of our runway. For example, if currently we're going to go heading 3-3, so it's very good if we have heading 3-3. We're going heading 3-3 when we're heading towards the runway, otherwise that's going to be an issue later. So you need to make sure that you have, you know, the heading correctly. There we go. We're going to line ourselves up here, and when we come within 10 miles, you know, we should get the little plus sign here showing us where to aim for, and there we have it. So we have pretty good indication of where the runway is. The goal here is to have the heading indicator showing heading 333 and our little heading direction thing here right on the little marker here. We're also going to slow down even more so we can extend our landing gears very soon. I believe though when we extend the landing gears, this little plus sign is going to disappear, so I'm actually want to wait with that until we have broken through cloud cover and have established a visual on the runway. I'm also going to call into the ATC here and tell them that I'm inbound. Let's see, Gudauta inbound. we can ignore what they say here, but we do need to request landing, otherwise they will actually not turn on their lights there. So I'm going to request landing now. And there we have, once we request landing, they actually turn on the landing lights here, otherwise it's very difficult to see. And we have established visual on the runway here now, so I'm going to lower my landing gear. I'm going to make sure we don't have too much speed. I'm going to raise my share a bit and go into APP mode. And just follow the regular landing procedures here. A little bit windy here. Let's see, and there we have the lighthouse. Let's see if we can go below 180 here. We need to power up a little bit here. We don't want to hit right before the runway. We're doing just fine here. We're gonna touch down briefly. Let's go idle and just slowly, gently pull her down here. Perfect. Let's nose up a bit here. Extend air brakes. Just a little bit with rudder to keep us in the center. It's a pretty good landing actually. And we're gonna very shortly just get our nose slowly down to the ground. There we go. And we're down. And we can just brake a bit here as well. Just a little bit. Enable steering. So let's have a look here. As you can see, we did a perfectly nice center line landing, and we only used roughly half of the landing steers. We had plenty of time, or plenty of distance to go before we reach the end of the runway here. So that's a very nice landing. I'm gonna fall back my air brakes here. So anyway guys, this has been a bit another tutorial, or like landing tutorial revisited on the Mirage. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the little bell, check me out on Twitter, comment down below if you have anything important to say. And once again, thank you so much for watching. Creative fun, checking out.